Impact of toxins, trauma, and thoughts on our body. This is a sensitive topic, and a lot has been written about it. No discussion on self-care is complete without understanding how toxins, trauma, and repetitive thoughts impact our body, mind, and emotions. Hi, I'm Nirmala Shekhar, and over the last 1 year, I have been exploring the 5 dimensions of self-care in a map of self-care. This is week 7 of our series on physical needs. Trauma, toxins, and repetitive thoughts. Let's look at these separately before we understand how they work together. Toxins are everywhere. Toxins are the waste products that our body has been unable to effectively eliminate. 3 generations ago, this was not a problem because there was much less toxins around, and our lifestyle supported us in eliminating these toxins easily. But today, toxins are everywhere. It's there in the food that I eat, the water that I drink, the air that I breathe, the skincare products that I use, my household cleaning products, the furniture, the paints in the home. It's there everywhere. Even if I decide to eat raw, it's still there in the fruits and vegetables most often. Since toxins are everywhere, sooner or later, everyone comes to a stage where we are overloaded with toxins and need to support the body in eliminating them so that we can move forward with our health journey. Trauma. Most of us understand trauma as something that happens to us. But trauma is not something that happens to us. Trauma is something that happens within us as a response to what happens to us. Most people learn to cope with the trauma in their life, and very often these coping mechanisms become so normal that we are not aware of the trauma that is within us and impacting our life in different ways. But this is a series on physical needs. Why are we talking about trauma and thoughts? Our body and our mind and our emotions are very closely linked. And I'll show you this glass of water. The water is distinct and the glass is separate. But what I do to the glass impacts the water. So if I swirl the glass, the water is going to move. And if I add some oil to stain the water, when I pour the water out, the glass is still going to have remnants of this oil. Our body, mind, and emotions are like this. What we do to the mind and emotions impacts the body, which is the water in this case. And what we do to the body in turn impacts our mind and our emotions. So when we try to look at supporting our physical body, we need to look at the bigger picture and see what is the trauma, what are the repetitive thoughts that are happening within me that is impacting my physical body. When we talk of repetitive thoughts, these repetitive thoughts impact my nervous system and also my gut. There is a lot of research to show that the gut and the brain are linked. So when my gut is overloaded with toxins, when my gut is impacted by repetitive thoughts or by the emotions that are lying under the surface as a result of my trauma, then these are going to impact my gut microbiome, and as a result of that, it impacts my brain again. So that circle, that vicious circle of the trauma, the toxins, and the thoughts impacting each other continues. Dealing with toxins, trauma, and repetitive thoughts. All of us have experienced clutter in our homes. And the way this clutter can accumulate in our homes is through one major event, maybe a major travel, a move, or some kind of a spring cleaning project. Or it can accumulate because of day-to-day living where I have not taken the trouble to clean up after me. I may be busy, lazy, or this is not a priority for me right now. Either way, no matter how that clutter accumulates in my home, the way to clear myself from this chaos and bring order in my home is the same. And when it comes to toxins and trauma, they follow the same patterns. We can accumulate them through one major event, a traumatic event in our life, or a big exposure to toxins. Or it can happen over many small, minor, micro events where we have been exposed to either trauma or toxins. And when we talk of toxins or trauma, one would assume that the body identifies these as not beneficial for us and wants to eliminate them as quickly, as effectively as possible. But the opposite is true. Our body handles both toxins and trauma with care, with wisdom and compassion. Let's go back to that analogy of clutter in our homes. Let's say many bags of groceries come into my home. I may leave them on the floor as a reminder that I need to organize it, put it away in my cupboards or in the fridge as soon as possible. But sometimes big boxes may come from the courier, and that may take much more time. And I may then choose to take those big boxes, put them inside wardrobes away from sight, so that my front room and area of living is uncluttered and comfortable. And when I have time, I may then go back, open those boxes and organize the stuff within them. And our body-mind operates in much the same way. Say I have had a period of time when I have been exposed to toxins or I have not eaten healthy, and the body knows that the toxins are accumulating. If at that time our body thinks this person is able to safely and effectively eliminate these toxins, it's going to leave the toxins in normal circulation and use a normal day-to-day processing of the body to eliminate these toxins. But if at that time the body feels my health is overwhelmed, I have other things going on, and it is better to put these toxins away to be eliminated at a later stage, then the body is going to find other places within the body to store these toxins. And most often that happens within fat cells. And we all know that when we start addressing the stored fat within our body, these toxins are released, and we need to find ways that these toxins that are now being released into the body are safely escorted out of the body. That is the wisdom of the body, the way it handles the situation. And when it comes to trauma, it is pretty much the same. If I'm going through an event, a grief or a loss, and at that time the body feels I need to be present to manage the situation, or I am too overwhelmed and not able to make sense of what's happening to me, the body is going to take this grief, this trauma, and put it away in some inner wardrobe somewhere. away from conscious mind, away from conscious awareness. What that means is that I have all the resources of my conscious mind available to help me go through what I'm experiencing at that point in time. Later on, when I have the bandwidth and I'm able to clear my schedule and I'm willing to do that inner work, I can open my inner wardrobe and make sense of my experience. And the same thing is true in other situations as well. Take, for example, the fact that I may be walking down a city and I am accosted by somebody with a knife and robbed. I feel powerless, helpless, but I'm also grateful that I'm not physically armed. At that time, the body feels that any display of strength is actually not a safe thing for this person at this point in time. So that strength, that power may be taken by the body and kept in some inner wardrobe for our own safety. And we need to then find a time in our life where it is safe for us to go back and open that inner wardrobe, make sense of what happened, and retrieve our inner strength. This is the wisdom of the body. And when we start taking steps to detoxify our body of the toxins and the traumatic experiences that we may have encountered, then we start clearing our inner cupboards, our inner wardrobes. We feel lighter, happier, a greater sense of well-being, and all of this contributes to our physical health. We also have access to our own inner wisdom, the wisdom that came out of that traumatic experience. Approaching detoxification with compassion. A few years ago, my son and we went on this project of spring cleaning our home. It took us weeks. We took room by room, cupboard by cupboard, bringing order in that, rationalizing whatever is in there. And every other day, we would take a trip to Salvation Army, drop off a few boxes, pick up dinner, come home, and the next day we would start again. And instead of the home getting cleaner and more orderly, it kept getting messier. And it took weeks of effort before that order could be seen, not just inside the cupboards, but also in all the rooms. And this process of detoxification is something very similar. It can get messy, it can be tiring, and it can take a lot of time and effort. But we need persistence to continue with this process. And very often that persistence becomes obsession. And when that happens, that obsession becomes disempowering. It is no longer self-care. And I want to illustrate that with this example. Let's say this is our body mind, and those are our concept of toxins and trauma that we need to remove or detoxify ourselves from. If I am zoomed in, focused on this process of detoxification, my life shrinks. My concept of the toxin remains the same, but my life has shrunk. And I wanted to show you this. It's not the same size, the ball there is not the same size, but I couldn't get that ball to fit inside this. But you get the idea. Our life shrinks, but the concept of the toxins that we are trying to rid ourselves of remains the same. And when that happens, it is occupying a greater proportion of my life as I look at it. And this whole process of zooming in to such an extent becomes very disempowering. Instead, if I can expand my life, fill my life with things that I enjoy, that I'm passionate about, add elements of self-care in many different ways, go around with friends, laugh, enjoy, then my life expands. And when my life expands, the toxins occupy a much smaller portion of my life, and this becomes empowering. This is a gentle way of looking at detoxification. It is a self-compassionate way of looking at detoxification. So when we do take on this project of examining our life and clearing ourselves of the accumulated toxins, trauma, and the repetitive thoughts that are going on in our mind, then approach it in an empowering way with self-compassion. That's all I have in this video. Thank you for joining me. This is Nirmala Shekhar signing off. Bye-bye. Namaste. Do subscribe and hit the bell button for more weekly content on self-care. And if you want even more actionable content on self-care, do join me in the Facebook group for weekly lives, discussions, and more tips.